A bit more rain trickling across Scotland during the evening before that tends to fizzle out. And then another weather front, another line of rain will edge in as we head into Wednesday, bringing potentially quite a wet day for Northern Ireland and Western Scotland. Late in the day, we could see some of that rain crop up across West Wales, Southwest England.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before. Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
It's 9 o'clock. This is Dan Wootton tonight with me, Mark Dolan. I'm in the hot seat tonight and tomorrow night. Dan's back on Wednesday. We've got a cracking 2 hours for you. Breaking tonight, let me tell you, and this is a very big story in the last hour, the Russian news agency Interfax has reported that Russia plans to introduce humanitarian corridors from several Ukrainian cities from 9 a.m. local time tomorrow. Russian shelling prevented evacuations again today, deepening the humanitarian crisis as a result of the conflict. We'll cross live to Ukraine to speak to their Eurovision entry for this year, who has paused his music career to help refugees desperately trying to flee to safety. That will be a fascinating insight into the situation on the ground. That's at 10:20. I'll also be joined by Ukraine tennis star Sergei Stakhovsky, who's swapped his racket for a rifle to fight for his country. You won't want to miss that. A compelling interview in the next 10 minutes. In the positive professor slot, a stark warning from the former head of the WHO cancer program that children will die if Ukrainian cancer treatment centers are not actually established. Very, very concerning story. We're going to speak to cancer guru Professor Carol Sikora at 9:30. As the conflict causes energy prices to soar further, is it time to bring back fracking to ease the deepening cost of living crisis? Is it time to frack, baby frack? We'll hear from all sides on that one in The Clash at 9:20. What do you think? Should we be digging for coal as well? We've got 2 or 3 decades worth of oil. Should we drill, baby, drill? Let me know your thoughts. Mark at gbnews.uk. Why are the SNP talking about scrapping our nuclear deterrent, the Trident system, when Putin is threatening nuclear war? I'll explain why. This proves an independent Scotland would be poorer, more woke, and less safe. That's in my big opinion. In 2 minutes' time, I'm not pulling my punches. Plus, are those same figures in the SNP using the Ukraine conflict as an excuse to delay the independence referendum that they fear is destined to fail. GBNews star Neil Oliver tackles that in The Outsider at 9:45. The brilliant political commentator Richard Taylor is uncancelled to tell us about leading the protests against Justin Trudeau's tyranny after the Canadian PM had an audience with the Queen today. I feel so sorry for her having to shake hands with such a tyrant. As a think tank suggests creating an NHS app with DIY appointments, why is our health service asking us to look after ourselves? Plus, as house prices defy the crippled economy by rising a whopping 10%, how do we fix our bonkers housing market? I'll put that to my panel in the Media Buzz at 10:30, where you'll also get tomorrow's newspaper front pages. Plus, I'll crown tonight's Greatest Britain and Union Jackass from my panel's nominations before the end of the show. So, an amazing 3 hours. We don't do boring, as you well know. My big opinion is on its way, but first, here is the brilliant Polly Middlehurst with...
Mark, thanks. The top stories tonight. Ukraine and Russia say a third round of ceasefire talks haven't led to any positive developments in improving the crisis in Ukraine. But the two sides said small progress had been made on logistics for the evacuation of civilians. Russia's top negotiator, Vladimir Medinsky, says he expects the humanitarian corridors in Ukraine to finally start functioning on Tuesday. Most of the routes so far have only allowed access to either Russia or Belarus, a move Ukraine has called completely immoral. Meanwhile, Volodymyr Zelensky will give a historic address to UK MPs tomorrow, as announced by the Commons Speaker, Sir Lindsay Hoyle. There's going to be no questions allowed, since the Ukrainian president is reportedly at risk of assassination by pro-Russian groups in Kyiv. The leader is expected to ask for more arms to help defend his country and renew demands for a no-fly zone to stem the Russian attack. He's going to be addressing the House of Commons at 5 p.m. on Tuesday, and it'll be via a video link. Now, the government has confirmed almost 18,000 applications have been started already for the Ukrainian family visa scheme. The Home Office says it's the first visa scheme in the world to begin since President Putin's invasion of Ukraine. It's understood it'll give Ukrainian people the freedom and the means to support themselves while they're in the UK, including security and free access to healthcare, education and housing. Well, the Dutch Prime Minister today claimed that Russia had been using cluster bombs in Ukraine, which are banned under the Geneva Convention. Speaking alongside the British and Canadian Prime Ministers, Mark Rutte said, "We can only guess what Vladimir Putin will do next." Meanwhile, Boris Johnson said more needed to be done in supporting Ukraine, as he announced a further £175 million in UK aid.
Our new international Ukraine support group will coordinate the efforts of the international community to provide long-term and unwavering assistance now and in the future. And we will be encouraging more countries to join us. This is the moment for Ukraine's friends to create a coalition of humanitarian, economic and defensive military support to ensure that Putin fails.
Boris Johnson, well, as you've been hearing, the Canadian Prime Minister says Her Majesty the Queen was as insightful as ever when he met her earlier on today. The 95-year-old monarch welcomed Justin Trudeau at Windsor Castle. After 2 weeks of carrying out only light duties, it's the first in-person engagement for Her Majesty since having COVID last month. On TV, online and on your radio via DAB+, you're with GB News. Now more from Mark Dolan.
Just in case you thought an independent Scotland couldn't be a worse idea, the leader of the SNP in the Commons, Nicola Sturgeon's bag carrier-in-chief, Ian Blackford, has doubled down on the SNP's policy of scrapping Trident, Britain's nuclear weapons programme. never one to read the room as Russian tanks roll into Ukraine, and with Vladimir Putin dangling the threat of nuclear Armageddon over the West, this tweed-loving Mr. Blackford is spinning quite the yarn. This fan of rough Highland fabrics should have you itching and sweating with his words. His timing couldn't be worse, of course, and this renewed commitment to weaken his country's defences couldn't be more tone-deaf. Welcome to the SNP. Proof, if you needed it, that an independent Scotland would be poorer, more woke, and with this announcement, less safe. More woke? How so? Well, here's why Scotland would be more woke in an independent scenario. New legislation being drafted in Holyrood includes lowering the age at which people can change their gender from 18 to 16. 16 years of age. This takes no account of the possible psychological and physical impact of transitioning too young and the irreversible damage done if they change their mind further down the line. Don't forget that Scotland is a country where now children as young as 4, that's right, as young as 4, can change their name and pronouns without the permission of their mum or dad. The influence of the family in Scotland is being diminished in favour of an all-encompassing state. Mother Sturgeon knows best. Soon, free speech will be a pipe dream north of the border too, with the only offensive thing that you'll be allowed to hear is a badly played set of bagpipes outside Edinburgh Castle. Scotland's so-called hate crime bill bans what it deems dangerous speech. But what is dangerous speech when it's at home, and who the hell decides? Not only will this affect the freedom of Scots to debate issues and have opinions, it inevitably means a crackdown on Scotland's great art forms as well. Comedians, for example, could be censored, cancelled or even prosecuted for a harsh joke. Now, I hated Jimmy Carr's gag about the Romani gypsy community. It was deeply offensive, but I defend his right to make it. Poor old Jimmy Carr would likely be staring at the walls of a Scottish prison cell by now for basically doing the kind of edgy comedy that he's known for. That said, Jimmy would be fine in prison. He's quite a pretty boy. How much of the genius of Billy Connolly's comedy would stand up to the harsh scrutiny of Scotland's censorious bureaucrats? What's next? Government-approved comedy? As crime rages in Scotland's great cities, the thought police are hard at work. I think people outside Scotland don't realise the extent to which this great country has fallen under the iron grip of the SNP. In my view, we've seen a land grab of Scotland's culture, institutions, economy and society by the SNP, for which this great country will pay a high price, particularly if they go it alone. Why bother with elections once Scotland departs the Union? After all, Mother Sturgeon knows what's best for you. I've received so many programme emails when I've been on air in the last few months from viewers north of the border saying, I'm a Scot, get me out of here. It's a jungle up there, and what the SNP is doing to this amazing country with a poor record on health, education and drug deaths is like a Bush Tucker trial to which there is no end. Mother Sturgeon's COVID policies involved, once again, an overbearing state with more lockdowns, vaccine passports and more mask mandates than their neighbours in England, but with similar, if not worse, outcomes. The pandemic was the perfect opportunity for Mother Sturgeon to flex her muscles and demonstrate her own party's colossal appetite for state control. Boris Johnson has, in my view, been Scotland's unlikely best friend. England's lighter touch approach to the pandemic, particularly since the 19th of July and over Christmas, has shown the way for the whole of the UK. England's approach since the summer, very similar to that of Sweden, has doubtless forced Sturgeon to ease up on some of her more draconian measures. England, with its success in lifting restrictions early, has embarrassed Scotland, and Wales for that matter, into doing the same. Another example of England making Scotland better, just as Scotland makes England better too. That is the magic of the United Kingdom, one of the most successful political unions in history. We all make each other better. Wales, Northern Ireland, England and Scotland. 4 magnificent nations, all punching above their weights and far better together than apart. Surely Vladimir Putin's appalling war on the Ukrainian people is further proof that unity and coming together is the way to go. Ian Blackford speaking out against nuclear weapons at exactly the time when Vladimir Putin sadly threatens to use them has got to be the worst take ever. So an independent Scotland would be less safe and more woke. But poorer? How so? Well, the furlough scheme, which has saved thousands of businesses and millions of jobs, could never have been as generous in an independent Scotland, not without breaking their economy. It's clear an independent Scotland couldn't possibly have the borrowing power enjoyed by the AAA-rated UK, the 5th biggest economy in the world. Now, I do acknowledge that Mrs. Sturgeon is a highly effective politician. I'm sure a nice lady too, and sharp as they come. And many people north of the border, viewers to this show, vote for her and will continue to do so. But I can only say to the good people of Scotland, a country I love and where I lived happily for 4 years, think twice before going to bed with Mrs. Sturgeon. You might just wake up the next day and wonder what you were drinking last night, at which point it's too late. You'll be stuck with the old dear. And it will be a marriage from hell you can't get out of. Now, breaking tonight, Ukraine and Russia today made little progress on peace talks as bombardment of major Ukrainian cities continues. This comes as it's confirmed Ukraine's president will give an unprecedented virtual address to the House of Commons tomorrow. Meanwhile, a retired Ukrainian tennis star has swapped his racket for a rifle as he joins the thousands bravely defending their homeland. Sergei Stakhovsky, who counts a Wimbledon defeat of Roger Federer among his many career highlights, was on holiday when the Russians invaded Ukraine. But he made the hard decision to leave his wife and 3 children in Budapest and return home to join the fight for his nation's freedom. Now a member of the Army Reservists, he's helping to repel the Russian invaders from his country's capital city of Kyiv. I'm privileged to say that Sergei joins me now. Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Thank you for joining us. Can you tell me what the situation is like where you are at the moment in Kyiv?
Well, Kyiv is pretty safe in terms of gunfights, but, you know, there's shelling and bombs coming in every day. We got 4 to 7 times a day airstrike alarms, so we need to go down. Some of those alarms, of course, we ignore, although we shouldn't. But yeah, in terms of that, Kyiv is so far safe inside. But of course, we all expect that it's going to take the course of Kharkiv, which has been bombed heavily for the last 4 days. Aviation and ground forces. So nobody knows what's going to happen next. Russians are shelling civilian sectors, killing civilian people. Doesn't look good.
Sergei, do you have a weapon? Are you armed?
I do have a weapon.
And what are you willing to do if the attacks are closer to home in the capital city of Kyiv?
Well, I'll stand my ground by means necessary.
How do your family feel about your decision to go back home, Sergei?
I would say not happy, but I still have family here as well. My brother and my father, with my grandmother, stayed behind. They couldn't leave, so I came to see them as well. Of course, I understand. And it was a tough choice for me, and there's no right choice in my situation. If I would stay home, I would feel guilt because I left my father and my brother behind, and I didn't join to help my country to survive this mess. If I would, now I'm here and I feel guilt because I left 3 little kids and a wife.
Obviously, what's happening in Ukraine is a humanitarian disaster. It's the most awful crime against the Ukrainian people. Tennis world number 2, Novak Djokovic, a man I'm sure that you know well, has offered his support to you, hasn't he?
Yeah, he did as alongside with all other tennis players, a lot of them. It just, you know, Novak is one of the most famous tennis players in the world, and he's a world-known athlete. So of course, putting him as a spotlight gives a little extra views or extra support of Ukraine, because right now Ukraine is not left alone in terms of media, in terms of people. We receive a tremendous amount of messages and prayers from all over the world, and it helps. It raises the spirit of the Ukrainian defenders. But we do need help from the rest of the world as well, a little bit, just to level this fight.
What do you think that help would look like, Sergey?
Well, everybody says it's impossible, but we would really need somebody to close the sky above us, so that Russia wouldn't be able to shell our cities and to fly and do the airstrikes above our heads. On the ground, it's going to be a fair fight. Russian army is not motivated enough. They're invaders. They expect when they're going to come, you know, the people will celebrate them as bread and butter. But unfortunately, for them, it's quite the opposite. The people are with bare hands are trying to stop their tanks from progressing. They're shouting them to get out. They don't want any Russian world inside Ukraine. And they're shocked. They're demoralized. And they understand that they're trying to fight the fight which they can never win. I mean, you cannot just occupy a 40 million country. Ukraine is the size of Europe if you put it on a map, and just Russia doesn't have enough militia to do it. And you cannot control, even if they roll into Kiev, you cannot conquer Kiev. Kiev is in a business day, it's about 4 million people inside it. Well, now during the war, okay, even if 50%, 70% left, you still have a million city. And to control it permanently, you either level it to the ground, or you need to put about 300,000-400,000 troops on the streets. They don't have it, but Ukrainians are willing to fight on every street. I've traveled through the city multiple times, and I'm not going to say it, but you know, it's almost an open season to Russians. Right?
Do you fear for your life?
Yes.
And what are your emotions? What are your emotions around that? I mean, is this courage? Is it anger? What motivates you, Sergey? Because it's remarkable what you're doing, but many wouldn't.
I wouldn't say it's courage or madness. It's just the routine you're trying to get in. You know, you're trying to do things so you don't think about what's going on around, and that makes it much easier. And then you get used to it. Of course, you have your ups, you have your downs, you have your spirits raised up, you have your spirits raised down. It's a normal state. I'm not a military personnel. I have no idea how this situation unfold or what to expect. So of course my conscience is constantly, you know, driving me. And at the end of the line, there will be a period somewhere soon, I guess, when I'm gonna get tired.
If there is not going to be a no-fly zone over Ukraine, how do you see this conflict playing out, Sergey?
Well, there will be a lot of dead civilians, military, but there'll be hundreds of thousands of dead, because the resistance is quite strong. We've been in war with Russia for 8 years, so we've seen what they have to bring to the table through Luhansk and Donetsk, and that's nothing but the misery and destruction. And Ukrainians, they don't want to live in misery and destruction. And on top of everything, Ukrainians just doesn't want to live in the world as a dictatorship. That's one thing that, you know, Ukrainians can live with bad governance. They can live in not the best social conditions. But one thing you cannot really take away from them is the freedom. And once you challenge that, then you challenge the nation.
My final question, Sergey, can Russia be stopped in Ukraine? Can they be defeated?
Of course they can, and they will be, but it will need the world to look at it.
Can Russia be defeated in the absence of a no-fly zone over Ukraine?
This is a question which I cannot answer because I'm not a military attaché or not even in defense system. But I think that the whole world is surprised that we are still standing. So I guess that's the answer to your question.
I think that Mr. Putin has grossly underestimated the courage and spirits of the Ukrainian people, perfectly distilled in you, Sergei. We wish you well. I hope you're able to stay safe and that you can stay in touch with your family and that this most awful conflict reaches a swift and hopefully not too hazardous conclusion. Thank you for joining us, Sergei Stakhovsky. Thank you, sir. Take care, and I hope we can catch up with Sergei Stakhovsky in the near future. What a shocking story, Esther, and what a courageous guy. Very typical of the Ukrainian people. We've heard so many stories like that.
I know. I don't think people... Well, I mean, I'm sure people realise, but this is very... Imagine leaving your family, knowing that there's a very real chance you could die because you're defending values that are... You're defending something that's bigger than you. He's defending the right for his family to even go back to Ukraine as it is. One of the things he said, which struck me, was the fact that, Russian ground forces are not motivated enough, which... is quite telling, because I did see a video of a captured Russian soldier who said, we've been lied to, we were told that we were fighting the Nazis and all that. I'm not sure of the validity of that, but it does show that there are two sides to the story and that we shouldn't dehumanize the Russian people because of what Putin is doing. And I think that's very important as well. There are people that are actually... there are many Russians that have family in Ukraine. It's not simple as it's not as black and white as it seems, or this binary narrative that's being pushed. And I think that's something that people really need to take into account.
Yeah, completely agree with you, Benjamin. What do you think about this man's story?
Well, I mean, it's true of the Ukrainian people that we're seeing en masse, right? There is somebody who has the lifestyle, the social access, the money to make choices prior to this getting so bad, but he knows he has to fight for his country and for his family. And we're seeing so many people, the former president Poroshenko, if I pronounced it correctly, who had left the country because he was facing some criminal charges, but he came back, putting himself at some risk to fight for his country quite literally on the streets. The mayor of Kiev, who is a very well-paid boxer who's going out and fighting. And I think that is why Russia will lose. Because even if they can shell these cities and destroy buildings and kill so many people, there will still be far more of the 44 million left who are never going to let Russia or a proxy for Russia govern them. And that is why I think Russia has no hope. The question is how much damage will be done in the meantime.
Well, yes, the issue is that Russia's only real threat, if we're going to listen to Sergei, is from the air. And that raises the question about a no-fly zone over Ukraine. Many people are calling for that because there's a humanitarian argument, arguably militarily as well. It probably would essentially defeat Russia. But if you've got the West shooting Russian planes out of the sky, then that's World War III, isn't it?
It is, and that's the problem, and that's why it hasn't happened so far. But I think that was an incredibly powerful and moving interview, not because of who he is, not because he's a tennis player, but because he talked about... Well, you were describing the SNP before. That's nationalism. That's actually quite dangerous. What he is doing is about patriotism. It's an entirely different thing. And he talked about the guilt of leaving his family, but he was also talking about the guilt that he feels now, because he's there to look after his father and his brother. My husband is Bosnian, and when the war started, he was living here. He tried to get back to Bosnia to fight, because he said, I will never live with this. I have to go and fight. And he couldn't get back in. The Serbs took the airport to Sarajevo. He couldn't get back. But he would have done that. And that's, I think, what's driving all of those men that are there now. It's not about that he's the famous tennis player. Yes, he could have dodged it. He could have stayed in comfort and whatever. But the bottom line is, all the people, the courage is not about what these people do for a living. It's what's in their heads and it's what they feel about their country. And I thought that was incredibly moving and powerful, because you see him. He's sad. But he's not beaten, and he's going to fight. Yeah. And he's got 2 young kids, and he's got a wife somewhere else, and they will be going nuts. They will be. She would have, I would imagine, held on physically and said, "You can't go." But he knows, as a man, he couldn't stay with them either.
Well, yes, lots more from my panel. Daily Express columnist Carol Malone, senior reporter at the newspaper Benjamin Butterworth, and social commentator Esther Kraku. Would you let your partner go back to their homeland to fight for freedom? Mark at gbnews.uk. Still to come, the positive professor Carol Sikora is here with a stark warning about the cancer time bomb looming in Ukraine as supplies and support run low. He's here at 9:30. But first in the clash, as Russia's invasion of Ukraine causes energy prices to soar even higher, is it time to bring back fracking to ease the deepening cost of living crisis? Environmental campaigner and journalist Donoghue McCarthy, politician and businessman Rupert Lowe, and pro-fracking petitioner and broadcaster Lois Perry debate that next. As always, your opinion is my priority, so let me know your thoughts. Mark at gbnews.uk or tweet us at GBNews. There's also a chance to get your opinion via our text poll, which is on Twitter as we speak. I'll see you after the weather.
Good evening. Clear skies for many of us overnight, which will allow it to turn pretty chilly for tomorrow morning. A breezy day with plenty of sunshine again across eastern areas. Further west, however, we'll see increasing cloud and some showers from these weather fronts that are slowly edging towards the UK. High pressure, though, is still in charge at the moment, and that's going to bring most of us a dry night. There are some big areas of cloud around, but that cloud tending to drift northwards and break up. So, as I said at the start, many of us will have clear spells, and that will allow temperatures to tumble. Many towns and cities, certainly in the far east and the far west, will stay above freezing, but down the spine of the country, we will see a frost, especially in rural areas. On to Tuesday's details. Quite a few of us a sparkling start with some sunshine. A brisk wind, though, and you'll notice that despite the sunshine, it will feel pretty chilly. Cloud increasing further west as those weather fronts just start to nibble in, bringing some showers to Devon, Cornwall, Pembrokeshire, and eventually we'll see cloud and rain spreading across Northern Ireland during the afternoon too. Slowly turning milder, double figures more widely, but not feeling all that mild with the wind. Even in the sunnier skies further east, only 7, 8 or 9 Celsius. We'll see a bit more rain trickling across Scotland during the evening before that tends to fizzle out. And then another weather front, another line of rain will edge in as we head into Wednesday, bringing potentially quite a wet day for Northern Ireland and Western Scotland. Late in the day, we could see some of that rain crop up across West Wales, southwest England. But at the moment, Wednesday looks largely dry for England, Wales and eastern Scotland, and bright as well with some hazy sunshine. It will again be quite windy, but the wind's always coming up from the south, bringing mild air. So again, temperatures widening to double figures. Colder, though, where that weather front is sitting around across Scotland and Northern Ireland. We'll see some more patchy rain, particularly in the west on Friday, and temperatures just ticking up, especially in the south.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before. Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
big reaction to my big opinion monologue. Let's have a look at this from Ruth, who says, "Dear Mark, Sturgeon is doing all of this to win the young ones to stay in power. She disgusts me, and so does the press and media, who do not even mention this to us, as there would be outrage. I wish Boris would revoke devolution. My anger is she has ruined Scotland, and if she gets into power next election, me and loads of others are leaving. We don't want her terrible, immoral politics." How about this from Chris, who says, "Dear Mark, your monologue on the SNP was spot on. Keep up the good work." Don says, "Mark, the SNP have become a party of useful idiots. Whatever the position taken by the UK government, you can be guaranteed that Scotland's hardline tartan fascists will take up the opposite side of the argument. Tunnel vision on independence combined with hard left policies makes Scotland appear ever more intolerant and narrow-minded. Here's hoping an effective opposition might arrive sometime in the near future." That's Don in Aberdeenshire. However, taking the opposite view, and this show is all about opinions, is from Colin. Hi, Colin. Thanks for your email. Colin says, "Dear Mark, Scotland is the #1 nuclear target because of Trident, which greatly increases our insecurity. Our pathetic Tridents are no match for Russia's 78 nuclear subs. In any case, there's no way that the English government will allow Trident to leave Scotland, which was obvious from a former admiral in the Daily Record today. There will therefore need to be massive protests against the UK government and independence ASAP." So that's Colin there pushing for independence. And this from Alex in regard to Ukraine. "I've seen some awfully upsetting images of killed Ukrainian civilians from journalists on the ground. This is real. It's heartbreaking." And Alex, on that we can absolutely agree. It's time now for The Clash. As the impact of Russia's invasion of Ukraine is felt at forecourts with fuel prices at a record high, thoughts are turning to fracking as a possible saviour. Almost 40 Tory MPs and peers have issued an 11th-hour plea to Boris Johnson to reverse plans to seal two of the country's only viable shale gas wells next week, claiming that pressing ahead with the fracking ban would play into the hands of the Kremlin, which they say wants to stop us following this path to energy independence. Well, 3 years ago, Quadrilla struck a supply of shale gas it says could eliminate Britain's dependency on imports by half. But following a tremor in August 2019, the government announced a moratorium compelling the firm to stop work. 2 wells in Lancashire are due to be concreted over on March the 15th. But as fuel prices soar, is it time to bring back fracking? As ever, I want to hear your views. Mark at gbnews.uk or tweet us at gbnews. There's a poll running as well. But to debate this, I'm delighted to welcome climate columnist for The Independent, Donica McCarthy, director of Car26, Lois Perry, and former Brexit Party MEP, Rupert Lowe. Great to have all three of you with me. Donica McCarthy, it's time to start fracking, isn't it?
Well, if we started fracking, it would start producing a reasonable amount of gas maybe in 5 to 10 years, and it wouldn't take a penny off the price of gas. So it has absolutely nothing to do with the current situation that we're facing. Britain is part of the global market for gas. So if we produce more gas in the UK, it is sold on the global market. This winter, 50% of the gas produced in UK was actually exported because the price was higher. So actually, the idea that we actually go down the route of fracking rather than insulation, energy efficiency and renewables is actually the wrong way to go and plays into Putin. Let's face it, since 1973, we have had warning that our addiction to oil will fuel dictatorships, will fuel climate change, and will fuel high bills for customers. We've had 50 years to tackle this, and we failed. So what we should do now is ramp up insulation for people so they're not paying huge bills, ramp up renewables because they're a quarter of the price of gas at the moment per kilowatt of electricity, and ramp up storage. That is the right way for Britain. It's a patriotic thing to do. And anybody who advocates going down the route of fossil fuels is actually betraying Britain in the light of the IPCC report that came out this week, that we're facing horrific impacts for Britain and the wider world within 20 years.
Lois Perry, is it time to start fracking?
Absolutely. Well, America hasn't had any of these problems. Their energy costs are actually a sixth for the average household compared to ours. And, you know, I think he must know that everything that he just said is absolute nonsense. I mean, if we start fracking, we can get the wells going very, very, very quickly, not 5 to 10 years. And we can be energy independent extremely quickly. We can do it at a cost plus setting so that we have domestic low energy prices, and then we can export the gas and make a profit elsewhere. There's lots of ways around it. It's absolutely essential that we're energy independent. And, you know, the IPCC report, really? Come on. Does anyone take any notice of that absolute nonsense? It's completely fabricated, most of it.
Rupert Lowe, what's your view about Britain's energy future?
Well, my view is obviously we should work towards increasing the amount of energy that we produce from renewables. And I'm involved in battery storage businesses, and I'm also involved in heat pump businesses. We're trying to design a more efficient heat pump. And these are things that we should be doing. But for us not to be using a relatively clean source of natural gas, which is there and available for us on multiple sites, not least, as you just outlined, the Trough of Bowland, where we've got enough natural gas to supply us for the next 50 years. I think the logical thing, and again, we've seen a lack of logic over the COVID 2-year sort of aberration, and I think this is completely illogical. And we heard the first speaker, I mean, I've never heard so much drivel in my life, but at the end of the day, what we need to do is we need to frack. We need to use that gas to transition to cleaner energy. I mean, if I tell you that on battery storage, as an example, we are wasting large quantities of energy that's produced overnight by our offshore wind farms because there is no battery storage to collect that and to match the generation with usage. So there's a lot that needs to be done to actually improve what we're doing. But meanwhile, to be at the beck and call of Mr. Putin or anybody else, and we are to much less extent in his if you like, hold than Europe has since they've abandoned a lot of nuclear energy. So I would advise everybody to read an article Boris wrote entitled "Ignore Doommongers, Britain Should Get Fracking," which he wrote in 2012, and before he was influenced by Kerry. And, you know, I think we're not very careful with food prices shooting up as well. I doubt that Boris, Kerry or indeed Zach Goldsmith are going to face a decision as to whether they heat or whether they eat. So I think logic would suggest we need to get fracking right now. And I've been saying that for some time. And I hope that common sense will increasingly permeate through our leaders and we'll see some action. To cap off our wealth,
sorry,
Lois?
Lunacy.
Lois?
Can I just say that, thank you. Can I just say that I've written today to the CEO of the Oil and Gas Authority, Dr. Andrew Samuel, to actually ask him to pause the concreting of the shale wells, which is due to happen in the next week. I believe it's absolute vandalism. It's horrendous and it's spiteful. And I also have a petition as well, a House of Commons petition, which has only been going for a very short while. And we've got nearly 12,000 signatures. You know, we are entitled to a response from the government at 10,000. And, you know, the public really, really, really want to get fracking. So I urge everyone to go and sign our petition.
Lois, one moment, Donica. Lois, how can my viewers find that petition?
If you go onto Google and put "End Fracking Ban" petition, it will come up straight away. Number one, top of Google.
Donica, great to have you back on the show. Good to see you again. The bottom line is that insulating homes will cost billions. It will take many years, and it probably won't make a significant difference. It won't make a significant difference to energy prices in the short and medium terms. And surely we should frack because that takes us out of the iron grip of Vladimir Putin.
On climate change. So actually, what's going on here is untrue. It's a betrayal of the British people. If we had listened to people like these over the last 20 years, we would have not improved energy efficiency for lighting, would not improved energy efficiency for fridges, and we would not improved efficiency for central heating. And the public would be paying 10 times more for electric for lighting.
You don't care about the public. You hate humans.
And so the
we
net
know that
zero
you
is
hate
saving
humans from the
cost
writing that
homeowners
we've seen.
hundreds and
You
hundreds of
hate
pounds
humans.
already, and we must keep going that way.
Donica, we shouldn't have listened to the green zealots like you ignoring the shale gas beneath our feet, 500 years of coal on our shores, 20 years worth of North Sea oil. Instead, we've imported it from dictators like Vladimir Putin, all because of your green policies.
Do you know how much renewable electricity is this winter? It's £50 a megawatt. Gas is £200.
It's subsidised.
You are
That's
lying
why.
about the renewables. They don't require the subsidies that they required 10 years ago, and it's untrue.
They do require
it is
wind
saving
and sun.
hundreds of pounds this winter for homeowners. And please don't repeat these lies. It's not fair to the public.
Well, the debate will continue. My sincere thanks to Donica McCarthy, who is a climate columnist at The Independent, the director of Car 26, Lois Perry, and former Brexit Party MEP, entrepreneur and broadcaster Rupert Lowe. Thank you for your time. What are your thoughts? Mark at gbnews.uk. Get your opinions in. Is it time to start fracking? Well, Roger on Twitter says fracking should never have stopped in the first place. Julian on email says, I don't care what energy source we use, as long as it's cheap and we are energy independent. The green lobby doesn't pay my bills. What about Synths on Twitter, who says, no, fracking is dangerous and will not solve our energy crisis. Neither will it make for cheap gas. That's just a fallacy. We need to go all out for renewables, wind and solar. Well, your verdict is in. On our Twitter poll, 90% of you agree that we should begin fracking again. 10% say we should not. Lots more to come. Are the SNP worried about the possible results of an independence referendum? Are they using the Ukraine conflict as an excuse to delay the referendum? GB News' very own Neil Oliver thinks so, and he's the outsider in a couple of minutes' time. But next, our positive professor, Carol Sikora, who treated some of the child victims of Chernobyl, weighs in on Russia's reckless assault on Europe's largest nuclear power plant. That is all after the break. See you shortly.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Should Britain get fracking? Strong views on email. Chris says, Dear Mark, I've worked in the oil and gas industry for 30 years. Oil and gas are essential to the world's way of life. If we stop producing oil and gas, we are denying the people of the third world the opportunity to succeed. In the world of levelling up, this is hypocritical. This encourages a two-tier world. Elizabeth says, I'm sorry, Mark, but it's just not possible to insulate many of Britain's homes. So yes, let's frack, use coal, whatever is cheap, really. I can't afford these rising bills. And on an independent Scotland, David says, Dear Mark, we voted for independence, yet every policy this government pursues makes us more dependent and more impoverished. Something is wrong with our government. Best wishes, great show, Dave. Dave, we do wish you well. So many viewers up in Scotland and in England, Northern Ireland and Wales too. This is, after all, Great Britain news. It's time now for the Positive Professor with Carol Sikora. Breaking tonight, US officials have begun gathering information to help determine whether Russia has committed war crimes during its invasion of Ukraine. A White House spokesperson said evidence is being gathered of human rights abuses and violations of international humanitarian law since the war began 12 days ago. Russian military forces have been attacking civilian targets and Ukraine's nuclear power plant facilities, including the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. The International Atomic Energy Agency last night expressed grave concern at the situation at Europe's largest plant after they were told that staff were now taking orders from a Russian commander. There's also concern for child cancer treatment centres as supplies run low and staff struggle to treat the children in the basements of besieged cities like Kyiv, pictured here. Well, I'm delighted to say that the Positive Professor, Carol Sikora, joins me now. Carol, you've treated children from Soviet Azerbaijan, which experienced a spike in cancer cases after the 1986 Chernobyl disaster. Now you fear that humanitarian disasters are looming large all over the country.
They are. It is a disaster. I mean, shelling nuclear power plants is a risky business. You're bound to release radiation. Luckily, at the moment, there's no evidence of a lot of radiation coming out, but this is just irresponsible. The consequences of Chernobyl didn't really manifest themselves in terms of childhood cancers and other cancers for 4 or 5 years. The children that we treated in 1991, that was 5 years after the Chernobyl disaster in 1986. That was an accident. That wasn't deliberate. This is deliberate, and that's the crime here. We've got to stop this because the leg will go on for years and years and be almost impossible to solve. The suffering is incredible for the kids now that have cancer. The hospitals in the States, hospitals in Poland, hospitals in Britain are willing to take the children, but it's not the same as being treated in Ukraine. And quite frankly, the quality of care in cancer treatment in Ukraine was really excellent 2 weeks ago. It's just gone down the pan because of what's happening because of Russia. So we've got to get a bit of sanity back into the world.
Another deeply concerning aspect of what is ultimately, Carol, a humanitarian crisis. I wish we had longer. Thank you for joining us. Of course, Carol Sikora returns in a week's time. What a devastating story. Now, coming up, as a think tank suggests creating an NHS app with DIY appointments. That's right, DIY appointments. We've got to do that ourselves as well to help ease the treatment backlog. Why is our health service now making us responsible for our own well-being? My superstar panel will debate that. Have you had trouble getting a GP appointment? Do let me know, mark at gbnews.uk. And you'll get a first look at tomorrow's newspaper front pages in the media buzz from 10. But first, are the SNP using the Ukraine conflict as an excuse to delay the independence referendum that they fear will fail? GB News star Neil Oliver tackles that next.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate.
From all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel.
Right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
I do love getting your emails. You don't pull your punches, do you? This is from Jeff, who says, in regard to the NHS getting us to organise our own appointments, dear Mark says, Jeff, tell them to F off and get someone to answer the phone. I've got to say, strong language from Jeff, but many viewers will share that sentiment. And also strong views on insulating houses as well. Dave says, where do you get these people from? Insulate my arse, says Dave. That man is an idiot. There you go. Well, as I said, none of you sit on the fence. Do keep your opinions coming. Mark at gbnews.uk. Neil Oliver is tonight's outsider. The SNP's Ian Blackford has tried to attribute any possible setback to the EU-loving Nicola Sturgeon's Indy Ref 2 as a result of the Ukraine crisis. Speaking in an interview, he said, I want that referendum to take place in a timely manner. I want us to be able to execute the mandate that we have. To those that are expressing a desire for us to get on with our job, of course, we will do so. But we have to be mindful of where we are. Well, this delay would be the third after two failed attempts, first in 2017, when the SNP suffered heavy losses at the general election, and more recently in 2020, due to COVID, and another setback risks enraging certain elements of the independence movement. And despite Sturgeon insisting a new referendum will be held next year, serious doubts have been raised over whether she can actually deliver her manifesto promise. So let's talk now to the brilliant Neil Oliver. Neil, welcome to the show.
Hello, Mark. Good to see you.
Good to see you. Do you think Nicola Sturgeon's getting cold feet about a referendum?
Well, I don't know if it's cold feet. I don't think another referendum will ever happen. You're asking me for my opinion. That's my opinion. And I don't think there's any appetite in Scotland for an independence referendum or to break up the union. I think the majority of Scots, including myself, want Scotland to remain part of Great Britain. And yes, I suppose the facts are, perhaps as Ian Blackford is demonstrating there, that they have to find more reasons, as they have done in the past, for kicking the whole issue into the future and into the long grass, because, in my opinion, it's just not going to happen because Scotland doesn't want it.
What about all those people voting SNP, Neil?
Yeah, that's a fact. It's the devolution settlement that Scotland was handed gave us a version of proportional representation that was like that old line about a horse designed by a committee ends up looking like a camel. It was supposed to prevent any majority holding sway in Holyrood. But the SNP found a way to game the system and have that majority or in all but name. And so we find ourselves in a situation, where we're a one-party state here with a mostly supine opposition and an ineffective supine media. The fact that that majority is there in Holyrood does not reflect the reality in Scotland, which is that most people don't want Nicola Sturgeon's SNP running Scotland. It's just the way that the version of proportional representation that we have can be manipulated. That's the situation in which we find ourselves. It's complicated. It's a complicated situation, but we're not just a one-party state. We're run by a one-issue party. That is the tragedy of Scotland. If there was a 100-mile wide asteroid 10 minutes from colliding with planet Earth, Nicola Sturgeon would step up to her podium and say that an independent Scotland would cope better with the impact. That's all that the SNP is about, and that's the tragedy that Scotland finds itself in. It's cast into sharp relief. The last couple of years, the COVID crisis, for all the posturing, all the determination on the part of the SNP and Nicola Sturgeon to take Scotland on a different path. We didn't have a better war. In many respects, we had a worse war than the rest of the UK. That all of that will come out in the wash, but all of that posturing didn't make any difference on the part of Scotland. And now here we are in a situation where there's a land war in Europe for the first time since, anyway, here we are. We've got a land war, and everything about the SNP just looks small. The SNP's preoccupation with other people's children, with gender issues, in the face of their inability to have a party in a brewery, the failure of education, the failure of industry, the failure of the economy, the failure of infrastructure, the drugs death, the lower life expectancy. And just once again, the SNP are small, and world events like what is happening in Ukraine casts that in sharp relief. We in Scotland, it might be hard for the rest of the population of Britain to get a handle on it, but we are just run by a small, mean-spirited group that are incompetent and incapable.
Neil, a real treat to have you on the show. Of course, you'll be back at the weekend, Saturday night, and you will return to Dan Wootton tonight. A week today, the brilliant Neil Oliver. What are your thoughts on that? Mark at gbnews.uk. Neil says, "Dear Mark, how on earth have the Scottish people been hoodwinked into falling for this SNP crap?" Ruth says, "Dear Mark, I find Nicola Sturgeon's apparent obsession with transgender issues and her surveys of young children's sexual habits really inappropriate and frankly quite creepy. If I were a parent, I would be incandescent if my child was asked to fill in a survey that, amongst other things, asked if they'd had anal sex. Does she have personal issues she should deal with?" There's a question. Ruth, thank you so much for your email. Do keep them coming. If you're supportive of the SNP or the principle of an independent Scotland, do get in touch and let me know your thoughts. Mark at gbnews.uk. It's all about opinions on this show. Lots more to come. We saved our best till last, a packed final hour of the show. This is Dan Wootton tonight with me, Mark Dolan. Breaking tonight, Russian forces are deepening the humanitarian crisis in Ukraine by shelling the escape routes it previously promised to open. At 10:20, I'll be joined by a top Ukrainian musician and music star who's given up her career to help fight for for her country's freedom. She is also, by the way, going to be talking about quite something, and that is Eurovision. Because let's move on to that. Ukrainian singing sensation Ole Siuk, who sacrificed his career and a Eurovision spot to help some of the 1.7 million refugees forced to flee their homes, gives us an insight into the harrowing conditions on the ground. You won't want to miss that one. Plus, political commentator Richard Taylor is here to tell me about the protests against Trudeau's tyranny as he visits the UK. That's uncancelled at 10:40. That's right, Richard Taylor live in the studio. Meanwhile, we'll talk about NHS DIY appointments via an app. And how do we fix our bonkers housing market? We'll discuss all of that in our media buzz. And we've got tomorrow's papers as well, and our Greatest Britain and Union jackass. But first, here are the headlines with the one, the only, Holly Middlehurst.
Mark, thank you. The top stories this hour. Ukraine and Russia say a third round of ceasefire talks held today haven't led to any positive developments in improving the crisis in the country. But the two sides say small progress has been made on the logistics for the evacuation of civilians. Russia's top negotiator, Vladimir Medinsky, says he expects the humanitarian corridors in Ukraine to finally start functioning on Tuesday. Most of the routes have only allowed access to either Russia or Belarus, a move Ukraine has called completely immoral. And here the government has confirmed almost 18,000 applications have started already for the Ukrainian family visa scheme. The Home Office says it's the first visa scheme in the world to begin since President Putin's invasion of Ukraine. It's understood it's going to give Ukrainian people the freedom and means to support themselves while they're in the UK, and that includes security and free access to healthcare, education and housing. President Zelensky of Ukraine is going to give a historic address to UK MPs, as announced by Commons Speaker Sir Lindsay Hoyle today. There'll be no questions allowed since the Ukrainian president is reportedly at risk of assassination by pro-Russian groups in Kyiv. But the leader is expected to ask for more arms to help defend his country and renew demands for a no-fly zone to stem the Russian attack. He'll address the House of Commons at 5 p.m. on Tuesday via a video link. We'll have it live here on GB News. Today, the Dutch Prime Minister claimed that Russia had been using cluster bombs in Ukraine, which are banned under the Geneva Convention. Speaking alongside the British and Canadian Prime Ministers, Mark Rutte said he could only guess what Vladimir Putin would do next. Meanwhile, Boris Johnson said more needed to be done to support Ukraine, and he announced a further £175 million in UK aid.
Our new International Ukraine Support Group will coordinate the efforts of the international community to provide long-term and unwavering assistance now and in the future. And we will be encouraging more countries to join us. This is the moment for Ukraine's friends to create a coalition of humanitarian, economic and defensive military support to ensure that Putin fails.
Boris Johnson speaking earlier today. Well, the Canadian Prime Minister says Her Majesty the Queen was as insightful as ever when he met her earlier on today. The 94-year-old monarch welcomed Justin Trudeau at Windsor Castle after 2 weeks of carrying out light duties. It's the first in-person engagement for Queen Elizabeth since catching COVID last month. On TV, online and on your radio via DAB+, you're with GB News. Now more from Mark Dolan.
Well, strong views on Scotland and independence. Diane says, "Hi Mark, I live in Scotland and agree 100% with Neil Oliver. It's getting more like North Korea by the day. Love your show and I'm a huge fan of GB News. Thank you for calling out Sturgeon and the SNP as they just get off lightly from the Scottish media here." Well, we always aim to hold the politicians' feet to the fire across the United Kingdom, and that is the purpose of GB News, let me tell you. Martin says, "It's time to have a nationwide vote on Scottish independence. I'd be glad to see them go," says Martin. How about this from Richard, who says, "Hi Mark, great topical show that analyses what really matters in these very trying times. The UK needs people like you and Neil Oliver to get your points across. Keep up the good work, GB News." Well, thank you, Richard. And of course, the brilliant Dan Wootton returns on Wednesday at 9. How about this, though? Carl, who disagrees about fracking. Carl says, "Hi Mark, for the last 20 years, fracking on the whole has lost money in the US. During those years, the pollution that was produced by thousands of lorry loads of fracking chemicals used to crack the shale has to be dumped on a return journey. Where would they dump this poisonous slurry, apart from also using millions of gallons of precious water in the process?" Carl, thank you for that. I'll get to more of your emails shortly, mark@gbnews.uk. But it's time now for our Media Buzz. Let's kick off with the first look at tomorrow's front pages, hot off the press, and we'll start with the Metro. And here's what they've got to say. Pull your finger out. Ex-head of the army, Lord Dannett, slams the UK's response to the refugee crisis. 1.7 million Ukrainians have now fled from the Russian invasion. We've let in just 300. And the newspaper, the same story. UK urged to help refugees. Britain's refugee scheme is in chaos as the Prime Minister is pressured to open the door to more Ukrainians. OK, I'll get to more of your front pages very shortly. But reacting to the big stories of the day is my superstar panel, Daily Express columnist Carol Malone, senior reporter at the newspaper Benjamin Butterworth, and social commentator Esther Kraku. Now, with the NHS backlog estimated to be over 6 million and growing as a result of the pandemic, or should we say the pandemic policies, the think tank Policy Exchange has proposed that patients should be allowed to order at-home tests through the NHS app to help battle the scramble for GP appointments. Their report hopes to shake up the NHS first contact services to take pressure off GPs in the short term, whilst in the long term allowing for greater health trend monitoring to better care for at-risk patients. They also recommend that the GP contract is overhauled further to slash bureaucracy and free up GPs to help patients with complex needs. But are they asking us to look after ourselves rather than actually solving the issue of declining face-to-face appointments? Esther, what do you think about this?
I think, obviously, any attempt at automating NHS services, you do have cases that fall through the cracks. I never really see these sort of articles praising the NHS for actually doing a good job, but once the NHS misses important cases like sort of, people with cancer or anything like that, you see it splashed all over the news. So I think this is very, you're treading on sort of shaky waters here, because the NHS could get a worse reputation if things are missed. I think the bigger issue here is the fact that there's so many missed GP appointments, and that I think it was 15 million GP appointments were missed by no-show patients. And that's actually a bigger issue, because if you don't have people turning up to appointments, this contributes to a backlog, because you have people that need these services and that actually turn up that don't actually have them. And I've always advocated for a model where it's actually, for GP appointments, it's not free at the point of contact, because you should actually have that exchange of money to see the value of the service that you're actually getting. I do think you should get it reimbursed back, but I think to see a GP, you should pay at least 20 to 30 pounds, like in other European countries, and then get the money reimbursed so you can see the value of the service you're getting as well. And it does create a psychological shift within the population. That's a bigger issue than just trying to automate it.
Well, that's right. I mean, I've got that arrangement with my dentists that if you want to see a dental hygienist, you have to pay half the amount in advance, because so many people don't turn up and it affects other patients. What do you think, Benjamin? It feels to me like the NHS is ducking out of its main duty, which is to see patients face to face.
Well, look, I think it's a good idea, to be honest, because there are a lot of people who are adept at using a phone app that will save their time.
Well, a trendy youngster like you.
It will, a
hipster.
Both of those things are fading, Mark. But, for lots of young people, that makes sense. For most of the population, that'll be absolutely fine. And both sides will have a more efficient process. I mean, I read in the article that 10 million people who have a urinary tract infection, you can just get a dipstick test. Why do you need to see a GP? Although I did think a dipstick test is probably something our politicians could do with...
Just a bit.
Just to qualify for office.
Just asked us what a dipstick was.
Hand them out for free in the House of Commons.
I'm like a pound shop Mark Dolan with these jokes. But, look, I think it's a good idea. The problem is that while lots of people will get a more efficient process from this and it might free up that time, the danger is that it becomes the default because it's more about cost-cutting than an efficient process. And then you get people, my grandmother's 89, wouldn't have a clue how to access something like that. And so if this becomes the default for how everyone has to get it, you're going to get all sorts of people, whether they're older or whether they simply don't, use mobile phones and things, that could end up being failed, as sort of Esther echoed.
Carol?
Doctoring by distance just doesn't work. We saw virtual medicine during the pandemic, remote medicine when people were going on, on laptops and all that. It doesn't work. Thousands and thousands of cases of very serious illnesses were missed. We mustn't forget, we pay for the health service in this country. We pay for this service. It's not free. I think Esther's right. You have to charge. You should charge people for appointments. But this idea, it's GPs. The average salary for a GP is 100 grand a year. I'm sick of hearing how hard done by everyone is. The average salary is 100 grand a year. Many of them are on 150 grand a year, nearly as much as the Prime Minister, the guy who runs the country. And yet they don't want to work after hours. They don't want to go and do calls after hours. They don't want to work at weekends. And so we have been getting a second-rate service. I don't doubt for a second many GPs are committed. Many of them work very hard. But you have to see patients. A couple of my friends are GPs, and they tell me that you've got to look at someone in the eye. You've got to be with them across the room before you can diagnose them. Ben mentioned the point, and you did too, about apps and older people. Older people will not be able to do these apps. It's really that simple.
And I don't think that's very helpful in an ageing population.
And if they're reluctant to do it, they're going to miss things.
Yeah, I feel like it's the corporatisation of the NHS. It's a bit like when you want to call your bank or you want to call your energy supplier, and the first thing they say is, "Oh, it would be better if you went online." It's like, no, I want to speak to someone.
But there's one thing it says here. It says patients will be able to manage their bookings and request, quote, a high-quality video consultation. What? As opposed to a low-quality one? I mean, what on earth does that mean?
Depend on the quality of your internet as well.
It's disgusting.
Hang on. I don't disagree with everything you're saying at all, but when you're saying about how we pay for the NHS, why is it that obviously we do, somebody like me or lots and lots of people that have fairly minor things that currently require a sit-down meeting with their GP.
I would give you a full examination.
I thought you'd never offer.
I wouldn't.
When so many
Get that shirt off. Let's check you out.
Oh God, you stop!
Let's find a love.
This is becoming a little bit nauseating.
Hope your wife's not watching.
Yes.
When loads of people have fairly straightforward issues, why should they be going and taking up an expensive GP's time when that whole process?
Because that's what they do. That's what a GP's for.
When that process could be done for, basically for free through the app. Does that not give you better value for money?
No, it's insidious because I did a piece last week where it said that hospitals now, they're going to opt out 27,500 patients. It's a 200 million quid scheme, and they're going to monitor patients from home. So they're going to have like a band on, and doctors and nurses are supposedly going to monitor people with cancer, with heart conditions from home. They can't look after the people on the wards that they have currently. Yeah. How are they going to monitor them from home?
Why should they be getting me in for something incredibly straightful that can be done with a click?
Because it might not be straightforward. Your blood test might not be straightforward.
It just takes
you might mess it up. You might miss something. You shouldn't be doctoring yourself. And when it says here, this is going to free doctors up for, take the pressure off busy GP services. What services are they going to have?
Yeah,
if you take
and we've
all
had
this
no
stuff
services
away?
for 2 years.
Exactly.
GP surgeries have been literally chained shut.
Completely.
What I'm worried about, Benjamin, it sets the precedent of the doctor not having to see you face to face.
Exactly.
I just would point out that I think given that we have, the way the system works isn't very good because you have this 8 a.m. rush where people who are sick on a particular day cannot get an appointment.
Get more doctors' receptionists.
They can't get an appointment. Well, look, no one wants to talk to the doctor's receptionist.
Well, but they're the ones who are going to answer the phones and make the appointments.
But you get that, and you can have a bad cold or something that's just come on where you want to go and see the GP.
Why do you want to see your GP for cold?
Well, a proper flu. The things that come on, right? And you can't see your doctor anything like quick enough until sometimes the problem has cleared up and you've just had to endure it being worse than it needed to be. So you do things like this, and there'll be far more appointments.
But we're not talking about that. We're talking about blood tests. We're talking about musculoskeletal problems. All of that.
Or you go in to see the doctor with an ingrowing toenail, and he doesn't like the look of the colour of your skin. You look pale.
That's exactly
You look
right.
drawn. You seem out of breath.
Yes.
And it's that secondary... I mean, not you, of
That
course.
was me.
You're
All
the
of those
picture of
things
health.
are me,
But
actually.
doctors often spot things during a face-to-face consultation that the patient didn't know anything about.
Yes.
But the thing, if this is about, because I genuinely believe this is obviously about cutting costs, right? The overarching is not just about providing a better service. I don't think that's the main aim here, because if you wanted to provide a better service, you'd be telling GPs to actually see their patients. If the overarching issue here is to save money, then we need to find a way to actually cut costs in the most practical way. If you have 15 million people not showing up to appointments, you need to find them.
Yes,
because this is the
completely
value of the service they're getting. And these are the people putting people who actually need those appointments at risk. And that is a very basic thing that can be done
Even
without
if you
these
had a
fancy
basic
apps or
charge,
anything like
never
that.
mind make the just charge everyone who comes for an appointment £10, and then they will not miss it. They won't make it unless they think there's something wrong with them.
I genuinely believe that you need to exchange money. If you don't turn up, you need to be charged.
That's what I'm saying.
The value of the
But is that not, speaking of precedents,
be
that's the slippery slope to privatisation, isn't it?
But what is this?
It's wrong. It's wrong on
you get it
principle.
reimbursed back. So this is I'm talking specifically about the European model. So what the model that most European countries apply, which is you do have to exchange money and then you get it reimbursed. And the principle behind that is psychological, because then you value the NHS more, because then you don't have 15 million.
But when you've got people that don't have 30 quid up front being able to do that, then you're going to have...
It's your health. You don't have 30 quid for your health?
Yeah, a lot of people don't have 30 quid.
30 quid is a lot of money. That's too much.
For
But a
anything.
tenner isn't.
You know, at
No,
this
a
time when
tenner
you've
is not
got
enough.
gas prices and petrol prices rocketing and stagnant wages, a lot of people don't have 30
But have we
quid.
forgotten the days
And they
when...
shouldn't be refused access to a GP.
When GPs used to come out to your home and see you. That so rarely happens now. They don't come out to see you at weekends. Imagine if you lived alone and you're elderly. You'd be terrified if a doctor doesn't come to your
Well, then
house.
they shouldn't be bothering me with my urinary tract.
Yes, they should.
Well, how do you feel about the idea that your relationship with your GP will be conducted on one of these, a smartphone? Mark at gbnews.uk. Coming up later this hour, how do we fix our bonkers housing market? Even though the economy's shot to pieces, house prices are up by 10%. We'll discuss that after 10:30. And we've got more of your newspaper front pages. But next, as Russian shelling again prevents evacuations and risks a humanitarian catastrophe, we'll cross live to Ukraine and speak to YouTube star Melania Podolyak and singing sensation Olesiuk, who put their lives on hold to help refugees desperately trying to flee to safety. See you in 2.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate.
From all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
Make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel.
Right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
That you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for...
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
An NHS service over the phone is a disgrace, says Alexandra. A lot of wrongly diagnosed cases. It's asking for trouble. I'll get to more of your opinions shortly. Mark at gbnews.uk. But breaking tonight, the Home Office has confirmed that 17,000 applications for the Ukrainian family visa scheme have begun, and 300 visas have so far been issued. The update comes after the government faced criticism earlier today over reports that only 50 visas, that's right, 50 visas had been given out. Well, we go live now to Western Ukraine with my next guest, Ole Siuk, the lead singer of the band Kalush Orchestra, who are Ukraine's Eurovision entry for this year. Their song, Stefania, which is a classic, I've got to say, has become an unofficial anthem in the country's battle against Russia. Take a listen. We're just firing it up. We don't play much music, but here we go. Well, Ole has paused his music career as he helps refugees and defence volunteers on the border. He joins me now alongside his translator, Alexandra Sehienko. So, look, it's a privilege to have both of you on the show. And let me ask you, Ole, why you've decided to stop your music and help your fellow Ukrainians.
Очень приятно видеть вас сегодня с нами в эфире. И первый мой вопрос, хотелось бы знать, почему вы перестали заниматься сейчас музыкой и решили заниматься волонтерской деятельностью и помогать людям Украины?
Да, всім доброго вечора. У нас, в принципі, перестали займатися. Малися раніше, і зараз кожен думає, чим він може допомогти своїй країні. Хтось пішов, один учасник нашого гурту пішов воювати. Я зробив свою волонтерську команду, допомагаю людям дібратись до свого житла чи знайти житло. Хтось кожен допомагає, чим може.
For now in Ukraine, the normal life has stopped for all people because we are going through the war. And our team is going to help all the people of Ukraine, doing everything what we can. For example, one participant of our team has gone to the army, to the Ukrainian army, to protect people. And me and my team, we have created the volunteer scheme to help people find shelter, to find new homes, because many people are coming to the Western Ukraine now looking for shelter, and we are helping them.
Ole, I think it's incredible what you're doing. Do you think you will be able to perform at the Eurovision Song Contest when it happens in May?
Это невероятно то, что вы делаете. Как вы думаете, сможете ли вы принимать участие в Евровидении, которое пройдет в мае?
Ну, ми маємо велику надію, що в принципі війна закінчиться, хоча б, як мінімум до того часу. В будь-якому випадку маємо надію, що будемо всі живі цілою командою і що нам так і вийде приїхати в Італію.
We hope that in May the war will end and we all will be alive and it will be possible to haul our team to come to Italy in May to participate in Eurovision.
And finally, can you tell me about the new meaning that the song has achieved as a result of the conflict in Ukraine?
И в результате еще один вопрос. Можете ли вы рассказать о новом значении песни, которая получила Стефания после вторжения России в Украину?
Ця пісня, це взагалі така... Спочатку, це пісня, присвячена моїй мамі, навіть Стефанія, так звати мою маму, в принципі, вся історія про це. Потім ця пісня виграла Євробачення. Так стало, що ми з нею пішли на Євробачення, і вона його виграла, нацвідбір. А тепер, коли почалась війна, ця пісня, вона ж стала піснею, гімном от цієї війни. Оце гімн зараз нашої української війни. І це все з одною піснею.
First of all, it was a song about my mother, and it was about my mother whose name is Stefania. And the second, it was a song which was prepared for Eurovision, and we won the Eurovision contest with this song. And now the song has become the anthem of Ukrainian people, helping us to be strong against our enemies.
Well, I think anybody that wants to support Ukraine can do so in lots of different ways, including contributing to charities in the country. But perhaps we should all listen to that song as well, Stefania, and take it to #1 in Britain and around the world.
Конечно, люди могут сделать много, чтобы помочь Украине, и делать взносы денежные и материальную и моральную помощь. Но прежде всего мы можем послушать вашу песню и сделать ее №1 в Великой Британии.
Супер, були б вам дуже вдячні. Були б вам дуже вдячні, якби ви нам допомогли, щоб наша країна закінчила нарешті цю війну. І чим ви можете нам допомогти, це закликаємо всіх, щоб допомогли нам закрити небо. Це те, що потрібно зараз для нашої країни. От кожен, хто зараз нас чує, закликаємо вас, допоможіть, щоб наші українські люди не вмирали. І просто говоріть про це в соцмережах, виходьте на вулиці, передайте рідним, знайомим, що в нас є така проблема, і ми хочемо достукатись до всіх, щоб закрили небо.
Thank you very much for everything that you can do for our country, and we would be pleased if you listen to our song in your country. But the most important thing now that you can do for us is to close the sky over Ukraine, because our people are dying. Now it's the most important thing in our country. And please, everybody who is listening to us now, write about it in your social networks and speak about it. Go to streets and ask to close the sky over Ukraine.
Well, the song is called Stefania. Do take a listen. You can hear it on all music platforms. It's, of course, the work of Ole Siuk. It's out now. We really hope that Ole is able to appear at the Eurovision Song Contest in May. And let's hope that the international situation is much better in terms of Ukraine by then. So my thanks to him and also his brilliant translator, Alexandra Serhienko. Fascinating conversation, very much the same message as the one coming from the former tennis star, the Ukrainian chap I spoke to earlier, who believes that there should be a no-fly zone over Ukraine in order to protect its people and help them to defeat Russia. Of course, there are big implications in terms of doing that, but it would appear to be the humanitarian thing to do, notwithstanding the possible international implications. Well, I'm joined now by media consultant and YouTube star Melania Podolyak, who has put her life on hold to help with the relief effort in Lviv. Hello, Melania. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Hi.
Can you tell me what the situation is where you are at the moment?
Currently in Lviv, it's relatively safe, if you will, so we don't get shelled. But we face a different kind of challenge. We do have a fair amount of displaced people trying to flee from Kharkiv, from Mariupol, from Kyiv and whatnot. So local government has been trying to provide some temporary shelter while these people find a place to live, and also while they choose whether to go to the border crossing to evacuate to Europe.
Melania, do you have a plan if things get worse where you are? Would you leave the country?
That is not an option I'm currently entertaining, because I'm needed here. I'm in constant beck and call with our troops. Some of them are my friends. Some of them are in active combat, so I'm needed here. We have this kind of logistics chain here that we help purchase, procure, and send military aid to Kyiv and other regions. So for now, I don't think I will be going anywhere. Of course, there are certain risks with that, meaning that if things were to be worse here, I would probably be in danger. However, as long as I'm needed, I'm staying.
Melania, clearly it's an awful situation. It's a humanitarian crisis. It's an appalling act of aggression by Russia. What is the mood of the people around you, the Ukrainian people, locals?
Everybody who's actively helping and everybody who knows what to do, they're very calm, cool, collected. The morale is very, very good. Those people who evacuate, sadly, it's a different, entirely different story. However, that can be understood. These people have suffered things that I wouldn't wish upon an enemy. But other than that, people who are active, people who know what they're doing, our military, everybody has, you know, we had this kind of a little bit of a dip emotionally on like 5th or 6th day of war. That is completely understandable, and everybody's exhausted. However, now I think it's kind of stable. So people around me, I see a ray of hope, and I feel very confident in my people, and Ukrainians and people around me.
Can victory be achieved over Russia without a no-fly zone?
Of course, but Ukraine has shown a tremendous amount of grace, and our military has been outstanding. We are dealing with this very well, in my opinion. I'm not afraid to say that it just so seems that we have one of the strongest militaries in Europe right now. However, our military is still not large enough. We need air cover. It's not about our troops. They're good at fighting, militaries. However, we need to protect our civilians. Houses are shelled. People are dead. Children are dead. Infants died from shelling. We need that no-fly zone, or at least we need planes to help us figure it out on our own. But it's just, it pains me to talk about this, since we have been warning everybody about Russia for 8 years. And we have been asking for support. And then when they started bombing Kyiv, everybody got their senses for some reason. And now we're doing the same. We're telling everybody what we need because we know Russia. And it saddens me that this decision it takes way too long. Our civilians are dying because Russia doesn't care about civilians. I hope everybody understands this at this point.
Are you persuaded by the argument that if the West were to police a no-fly zone over Ukraine, it would effectively start World War III?
World War III has already started. We have Belarus involved in this war now. There are other countries that, the Baltic states, Poland, they are very alarmed. They know what we're talking about. I just don't want, I don't want anybody, I can't make Europeans feel safe. I know what Russia is. They're not going to stop. When Putin talks about we are not hurting our neighbors, do you know what he means? He doesn't mean us. He means other European countries that border us, because he thinks we are a part of his country. And remember how he promised 8 years ago he wouldn't hurt us, back then being a neighbor. I cannot guarantee, as a Ukrainian and as a person who knows something about something, I cannot guarantee to anyone in Europe that you are safe and that you are not involved, sadly. And everybody in Poland, in Latvia, Estonia, they know what I'm talking about. So this is very important. Putin's undermining the security architecture of the entire world now. I'm not just talking about Europe. So I think West should get involved. I mean, how many Ukrainians have to die in pain? How many infants have to die for people in NATO to understand that, this isn't just some, a coin you can toss to Russia. I hope somebody gets involved, because Ukraine has been incredibly great at fighting Russia back. Imagine what we could do together. Imagine we could put them back where they belong. But it feels again that nobody's listening, and we've been warning for years. That's my biggest concern.
Melania Podolyak, I'm deeply grateful for your time and for such an important contribution to the programme. We wish you well, and I hope that we get to speak to you very, very soon again on this programme. Melania Podolyak, who is a star on YouTube. She's also a media consultant, and I think you'll agree, an extraordinarily articulate person to boot. Well, coming up, the uncompromising political commentator Richard Taylor joins me live in the studio to talk Justin Trudeau. That's at 10:40. But next in the media buzz, how do we fix our bonkers housing market? My brilliant panel will return to debate that. Plus, we got tomorrow's papers as well.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Let's return to tomorrow's news tonight in our media buzz. So much to pack into the last 20 minutes of the show, so let's power through the front pages. The Guardian, Kyiv rejects Putin offer to let people flee into Russia. The Mail, new dash for gas to break Putin's grip as Queen pays moving floral tribute to Ukraine amid more evidence invasion is stalling, fears energy bills could hit £4,000 a year. Who's got that money? How about the Telegraph now? Putin sets out his key demands to halt invasion. Deaf children escape front line as shells land so close they can feel the impact. How about the Sun? Powerful headline. Let it go. In a Kyiv bunker, little Princess Amelia sings the Frozen anthem and captures the hearts of millions around the world. On behalf of the innocent victims of his savage war, we say to Putin, let it go. The Times, shredded faces chart Putin's strategy better than any map. 55-year-old woman there. Yelena Bolyachenko lost her sight entirely in one eye and partially in the other when a Russian shell hit her home. Those are your front pages. Well, more on the media buzz now with my brilliant panel, Daily Express columnist Carol Malone, senior reporter at the newspaper Benjamin Butterworth, and social commentator Esther Kraku. Now, it's bad news for house hunters, as UK property prices are rising at their fastest rate since 2007, hitting a new record high. According to Halifax, house prices have climbed by 10.8% since last year, whilst property values have increased by 0.5% month on month. The hefty increase takes the average British house price to a dizzying new height of £278,000. That is 8.8 times the typical UK salary. Most mortgage lenders will only lend from 3 to 5 times the average salary. So this cap, combined with the lack of houses for sale, means it's becoming an almost impossible task for individuals to get on the property ladder. Benjamin, how do we fix our bonkers housing market?
Well, I think you have to... I'd quite like a house, so it means something to me. You have to relax the planning rules hugely. You know, you have a situation where you have boomers who bought all these newly built houses in the 50s and 60s, and now they have a heart attack if there's so much as a property in sight of the golf course they use.
Yeah.
That attitude has to go. You also have the problem that in a city like London and increasingly other cities, you've got these great glass skyscrapers, but they're basically just boxes for money because foreign investors build them, no one buys them to live in them, and then they inflate in value, and it's just a different way to put it in the bank.
Well, it's a great way to launder money, isn't it?
Well,
buying apartment blocks off plan.
And it's ridiculous, the idea that, you know, other foreign investors buy from other foreign investors using London like it's just some glorified bank. You know, the situation is completely ridiculous. The fact that someone earning even a really good salary in this country, particularly in our cities, and not just London, many other cities now, the fact that they cannot possibly afford to buy a house until maybe they're in their 30s when they make all the right decisions is an unsustainable situation.
Do you want to hear yourself?
I know.
It is not your human right to own a home.
Well, you've got two of them, so it's easy for you to say.
Yeah, you know what?
Two houses, Malone.
It's taken 50 years to get them and a lot of hard work. And I'm sick of this narrative that people of my age who have their own house, we should all move out of them and give them to you young people. You know, when I was your age, I was paying 17% in interest rates, and more than half of my salary went on my mortgage payment. And the reason I did that, and the reason I skinned myself to do it, was because that was my priority. And I did with that loads of other things, things that you, I suspect, wouldn't do with.
But Carol, please don't mention gym membership or lattes or crushed avocado.
Well, that's him.
Trust me, I don't have a gym membership.
Carol,
trust me, I don't have a gym membership.
House prices were proportionately far lower back in the day.
I get all of that, but that was
That's important.
That is yes, of course I get that. I'm living in the world. I get that.
You're living in a big house.
You're living in a.
But I'm sick of this.
An ivory tower.
I'm not living in an ivory tower. But I worked hard for what I have, and I did without to have what I have.
What do you think we do?
Carol, hold on. Hang on. Let me just. Weren't you 35 when you owned your first home?
I was about 32.
Okay, but you were in your 30s.
Very old.
So this idea that you have to own your own home, and I'm sorry, please continue because I completely agree. with this idea that you
actually live.
Is ridiculous.
I'm not going to say where you live, but you live in one of the ritziest parts of London. A rented flat. You could probably afford to buy a flat a little bit out of town. You've got no God-given right to live in the capital city.
Hang on,
so you could buy a house.
Hang on, my rent's completely normal. I just got a good deal, so I don't think I can be blamed for that. But look. The truth is, you just said that your mortgage was about half of your income. The average renter, young renter in a city like London, pays a third to half in rent, and they don't have any choice about that.
It's going nowhere. It's not an investment.
And can I just point out some facts on this? Because in 1993, which is just shortly after I was brought into the world, the average house price was £51,000, and the average salary was. I'm going to finish. It was £11,300.
But that's stats.
Now.
Okay.
If it had gone up at the same rate as what people are actually earning, it would be £110,000 today, but it's not. It's more than a quarter of a million.
But you do realise that these rises in the housing market are cyclical. And 2000
They're not cyclical. It's been going on for 30 years.
Rubbish. 2018, the yearly annual increase was 2%. Now it's 10%. So it did. Houses plummeted.
It's gone up.
We haven't had a
There was a housing crash in 2007 where people's houses plummeted. You haven't been around long enough to know. I have lived through all of this, and this is.
Carol,
we haven't had a proper
saying.
housing market crash since 1990.
Not rubbish. We had one in 2000. We had one in 2007.
A correction.
2008.
The average house.
It wasn't. It was.
You lost a conservatory, nothing more.
The average house price went up more. Hang on. The average house price went up more in the last year than the average salary for 12 months' work.
And it went down. It went down by the same in 2018.
Okay, briefly, Esther, I've got to get to Richard Taylor.
Is at the expense of young people.
I've got a talented Welshman waiting in the wings. You never make
you just let them keep going because I'm just watching. This is like.
Go on, fix this for me. How do we fix it?
Well, one of the issues is our obsession with home ownership. It's actually a cultural issue. If you look at mainland Europe, most people actually rent, and they're fine with renting. I don't have a problem with that, but you have to look at it in terms of the actual society, the culture of the society you're living in. There's not enough new build houses, and the demand is exceeding supply, which is obviously what the rise in housing prices. But there's also a cultural attitude. You have to own your own home. Well, if that's your priority, I know this is the most conservative thing I could say, but hey, I'm a conservative. Get married, stay married, combine your income so you can have a greater chance of being able to stay for a mortgage.
I agree. Marry a rich man.
No, she didn't say that. She really didn't say that. She really didn't.
It's something I should have done, but Mrs. Dolan's watching. Look, we'll crack on. Of course, we'll return to that conversation. I'll have a look at your emails very shortly. I wish we had longer, but we've got our Union Jackass and Greatest Britain coming up. And also, in Uncancelled, the brilliant Richard Taylor, political commentator on Justin Trudeau in London, shaking hands with the Queen. See you shortly. Coming up on Dan Wootton tonight with me, Mark Dolan. She went to Ukraine to celebrate her mother's 85th birthday, but ended up trapped in a war zone. We meet the American who's desperately trying to flee Putin's tanks. Plus, I'll give you my big opinion on some of the crucial issues of the day before we get to your vital views. You'll also get a first look at the next day's newspaper front pages, hot off the press. GB News star Darren Grimes will serve up his uncompromising common sense in The Outsider. US Colonel Stuart Scheller is uncancelled as he tells us how he lost his military career for criticising Joe Biden's calamitous Afghanistan withdrawal. And reacting to the day's big stories will be my superstar panel, the former Daily Star editor Dawn Neeson, former Conservative London mayoral candidate Sean Bailey, and author and journalist Rebecca Reid. That's Dan Wootton tonight with me, Mark Dolan, Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. on GB News. Well, a very busy studio, and it's been populated by a very talented Welshman. It's time for Uncancelled. Are Welshmen the best? Probably. Yes, it's time for Uncancelled, where Britain's top commentators speak out on controversial issues without the fear of cancel culture that is now sweeping the rest of the media. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has arrived in Europe this week to meet with allies amid the conflict in Ukraine. In a Downing Street press conference today, the UK, Canada and Netherlands announced they're setting up a support group to provide help to Ukraine now and in the future. Trudeau also received an audience with the Queen in Her Majesty's first face-to-face engagement since catching COVID. She's just recovered. This is the last thing she needs. But whilst the Canadian Premier plays the role of great statesman, many in this country haven't forgotten his dictatorial affront against his own people during the Truckers' Freedom Convoy. This afternoon, protesters gathered outside the Canadian Embassy to stand in solidarity with Canada's citizens and oppose draconian vaccine mandates. Among them was political commentator, a very good friend of the show, a friend of mine and a friend of GB News, Richard Taylor. Hi, Richard.
Hi, Mark. It's nice to be with you.
Oh, it's great to be here.
It feels like a mastermind chair, this does to me.
Well, I've got questions, and I've started, so I'll finish. What motivated you? You're a really busy guy. You're an entrepreneur. You're based in Wales. Why did you come to London today?
Well, simply because showing solidarity to our brothers and sisters in Canada. We all seen the scene, certainly on social media, not on mainstream media, at Ottawa, that tens of thousands of truckers turning up because of the mandates that he imposed on his own people, taking away their rights and their liberties. And, it's been well documented here on GB News as well. And we were there today to show solidarity, really, to our brothers and sisters, because they inspired thousands of people around the world to show them that the power of protest is so important in a democracy, and we can never forget that, especially in the UK. We've seen things happen in the last 2 years during this pandemic, because COVID is still a thing, apparently, not just what's happening in Ukraine. And I fear that our country has faced so many opportunities where politicians have taken some of our social and civil liberties away at a strike of a pen using emergency power acts. And that's what Trudeau did. He's a tyrant in his own country. And to see him today with the Queen, unmasked, and this is a man who mandated masks, which I know you're not a fan of.
No, well, I'm like you, I'm pro pro-choice.
Yeah, absolutely pro-choice. But to see him virtue signalling today, unmasked with the Queen, shaking her hand, she's 95, you know, a deadly virus apparently. And of course, then he's with Keir Starmer, both of them masked up, sat down next to each other.
By the way, which of the two of them is most woke? That would be a woke-off.
It was a great,
did they both take the knee?
It was a great, I said that on Twitter, there was a great advert for virtue signalling pin-ups. That's what they were. That's exactly what they were. I mean, look.
Trudeau is Mr. November.
At the end of the day,
Keir Starmer, Mr. January.
He's an elected official. He's entitled to come over here. I get that. But at the same time, this is a man who treated the Canadian people so badly and so wrongly. And he imposed emergency powers that have only ever been enacted during wartime. And he did that to get rid of the truckers, giving them up to a 12-year sentence, a $100,000 fine, and even one of the organisers, Tamara, is still in prison right now. She was arrested, remanded, and refused bail. She was one of the main organisers for the truckers' convoy because they see her as a threat. I mean, he's a threat to his own democracy, in my opinion.
Well, that's right. We've seen Western values junked, haven't we, in the course of the pandemic? Illiberal measures that are not the nature of any free society. Do you think there's more than a touch of Justin Trudeau about Mark Drakeford, your First Minister?
Well, we couldn't have this conversation without mentioning the Emperor down at Cardiff Bay, Mark
I mean,
Drakeford.
Mr Drakeford isn't quite as gorgeous as Trudeau, is he?
No, I've seen better suits, sort of an Oxfam skip. Sorry to Oxfam, by the way. But yeah, I mean, look, some of the draconian measures we've seen in Wales, we've still got COVID restrictions in place up until the 28th of March, because apparently at the 20th of March, COVID is leaving the building. I just don't understand why. You know, we should have had a whole UK kind of approach to the whole thing right at the start. And even now, he's avoiding scrutiny and accountability. We have no public independent inquiry into the lockdowns and, you know, what they did to people's mental health, the devastation it caused to our economy. They're having a UK-wide one, but not an independent one. And to me, that's wrong, because he's accountable to the Welsh people for mistakes he made in Wales.
Richard, I hope you'll join me as a special Mark Meets guest on my weekend show, because my viewers are your biggest fans and you've got such a story to tell. And credit to you for speaking up for freedom this afternoon in central London, standing up to that pint-sized dictator, old Justin Trudeau. Well, look, lots more to come, and my thanks to Richard Taylor. It's time now to reveal today's Greatest Britain and Union Jackass. Carol, Benjamin and Esther have their Greatest Britons and Union Jackass. So, Carol, let's have your Greatest Britain, please.
OK, Mark, tomorrow is International Women's Day, and I salute the brave women of Kiev, many of whom have stayed behind to help with the injured and with the evacuations that are happening there. Tragically, over the weekend, 3 of these amazing women were killed. A lady called Valentina Pusic, Mariana Kalabinana and Anastasia Yelansky. I hope I've got this right. They were shot down by Russian forces. This is what Putin's doing now. He's shooting down women and children. But we have to salute these women. They're exceptional. And we must mourn the 3 that died at the weekend.
What an excellent recommendation. What a fabulous nomination. Benjamin, briefly, your Greatest Britain?
Mine is a 19-year-old who has cleverly set up a Twitter account that tracks the helicopters, the jets, the yachts of the oligarchs to show the movements they're doing and the fact that some of them are still leading lives of extraordinary luxury around the world. And I just thought it was a genius move from a Twitter account of a teenager that exposes the truth.
Esther, a couple of seconds, your Greatest Britain.
It sounds like the Tinder swindler for oligarchs.
It does a bit.
My Greatest Britain is the Queen, because I cannot think of anything more horrific than, after just recovering from COVID, having to grant an audience to Justin Trudeau.
There you go. I would like to find some balance on email, people supporting Trudeau, but I'm afraid it's tumbleweeds on my laptop. My personal choice there is going to be the women of Kyiv and all of the women in Ukraine who are so courageous. OK, just a couple of seconds for your Union Jackasses. You could just nominate yours for me now, Carol.
Mine is the Home Office in its entirety, because it's not fit for purpose. Put Priti Patel at the top, but it's the Home Office. You know, we've let 300 Ukrainians into this country. Moldova, which has a population of 2.6 million, has let in 82,000. Poland, 885,000. We've let in 300.
In 2 words, your Union Jackass, young Benjamin?
Dizzy rascal. He got convicted of assault today. He walked out, grabbed a paparazzo's camera and threw it across the road.
Boom.
Look.
Esther.
My Union Jackass is Gary Neville, and I suppose in solidarity, also Carol, for thinking that the UK's only form of humanitarian aid is to import millions of Ukrainians. Can I just say that there are countries literally walking distance of
There you
Ukraine?
go. Another woke footballer. My nomination is Dizzy Rascal. Thanks for watching. I'm back tomorrow. See you then at 9 o'clock. Good evening. Clear skies for many of us overnight, which will allow it to turn pretty chilly for tomorrow morning. A breezy day with plenty of sunshine again across eastern areas. Further west, however, we'll see increasing cloud and some showers from these weather fronts that are slowly edging towards the UK. High pressure, though, is still in charge at the moment, and that's going to bring most of us a dry night. There are some big areas of cloud around, but that cloud tending to drift northwards and break up. So, as I said at the start, many of us will have clear spells, and that will allow temperatures to tumble. Many towns and cities, certainly in the far east and the far west, will stay above freezing, but down the spine of the country, we will see a frost, especially in rural areas. On to Tuesday's details. Quite a few of us a sparkling start with some sunshine. A brisk wind, though, and you'll notice